Hi, this is Dr. Sana Hashmi. I'm a fellow at the Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation. And this week in my Prince Eye on China column, I examined the Chinese discourse on the BRICS expansion that is now going to be BRICS 10 and how China is positioning itself at the center of this evolution. And more importantly, how is India being viewed within the grouping in Chinese discourse? So, the 16th BRICS summit is currently underway in Kazan, Russia, and it is the debut of BRICS in its expanded form. For Russia, this summit is important because it is about showing international backing amid its political challenges and to show that Russia is actually not isolated amid Western sanctions. But for China, it is much more important. China sees BRICS as a key pillar in its broader vision of a multipolar world, one where the global south can have a stronger voice and challenge the Western dominated order. So, this is a narrative that we have been seeing from the Chinese side on Chinese social media and the strategic community. So, definitely, China is portraying BRICS as a grouping that is contrary to what the Western dominated groupings have been preaching. And in Chinese media and strategic circles, there is absolutely a strong push to frame BRICS not just as an economic bloc, which how it was started as, but as a global force that promotes development, stability, and inclusivity. So the inclusivity is something that China has been focusing on. It's a different thing that it matches China's words or not, but this is something that is to challenge the Western dominated global order and multilateral initiatives. Then Beijing's narrative emphasizes BRICS as the voice of the global south. And when we talk about voice of the global south, we know that there has been contest between India and China to be the voice of the global south and to be a leading power in the global south. But from Chinese perspective, BRICS has become a platform to reshape its image, reshape international governance, where China is leading, and more importantly, to counterbalance Western influence. So this is something that BRICS has been portrayed by the Chinese. Then one of China's key focuses in this expanded BRICS or BRICS 10 that now media is calling it is the inclusion of more non-Western countries. And that's a signal towards a shift that is towards a more inclusive and multipolar international system. So there are a few Chinese scholars who are being very optimistic about this expansion. For example, a professor from Fudan University, Chu Chie-chen, see this expansion as Chinese victory. The BRICS Plus cooperation model, that was something that Chinese side portrayed, Xi Jinping came up with. It is now drawing countries that want to challenge the US centric global order. They're not happy with the Western centric global order or the so called rules based order. Then at the same time, Chinese scholars are also keen to highlight that the new BRICS will be more focused on areas like the digital economy, artificial intelligence, and these are the areas where Chinese leadership is trying to portray that it is an emerging leader. And um, and in fact, this has been echoed by a scholar named Wang Lei, a director at Beijing Normal University, who points out that BRICS is now more important than ever for China, primarily where it's a platform where China will be able to enhance its global idea of global economic governance and expertise in areas such as AI and digital infrastructure. But amid all this, where do we see India in this Chinese narrative? Because now what we are seeing is that BRICS is something where China is showing and portraying itself as a leading member, is a leading power, as a member who is working towards making BRICS a success. So where does India stand in this Chinese narrative, broader discourse on India? So Chinese commentators frequently portray India as a disruptor. There is definitely a recognition that India is an important partner both within the BRICS as well as beyond BRICS in the broader Indo Pacific region. But despite that, I think there is this kind of a push to portray that India is an obstacle to the success of groupings such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as well as BRICS. Then there is also a push for a narrative that complicates, that India is the one that kind of complicates the group's expansion and perhaps the direction due to its balancing act with the West. That India is kind of in between, and in between the West as well as groupings that are. That have more non-Western countries. So on platforms like Pytho, India's reluctance to initiatives such as BRICS Pay and de-dollarization is being interpreted as India's fear of losing influence with the West. But there is also sub-discussion regarding India's worries with respect to its own influence within the grouping. It's just not about balancing between the West and China and Russia and the global South, but it is also about how India views itself within the BRICS grouping. For example, a scholar named Chen Kanrong, who was a professor at Renmin University, he argues that while China dominates economically within the BRICS and Russia has political influence in the grouping, India somewhere find itself struggling to find a clear role for itself, find a clear leadership role within the grouping. And according to this perspective, India's strategic autonomy and its efforts to balance relation with the US have further complicated its position within the BRICS. So this is an argument that has been pushed among Chinese strategic community. Then but there's also cautious optimism in Chinese discourse with vis-a-vis India's position and India-China relationship, specifically within the BRICS. Then India's participation in the summit and the recent petroling agreement at the ALSE are being kind of seen as potential signs of a thaw in relation between India and China. And then it was also interpreted as Modi's willingness to agree for a meeting with Chinese president on the sidelines of BRICS, and this meeting is going to be the um, first meeting in 5 years. So this meeting definitely holds significance for both India and China. Then, but I do believe the success of this expanded BRICS will ultimately depend on how well China balance its leadership, perceived leadership role with genuine inclusivity. As China is portraying itself as a leader of the global South, as a leading power within the BRICS, it has to ensure that it is also enhancing and furthering genuine inclusivity within the grouping. And for BRICS to be a true alternative to the Western led global governance, global order, China has to ensure that it doesn't alienate or undermine other member countries, the interest of other member countries, and specifically when it comes to India, that was a founding member and that has been an indispensable member of the BRICS. And I don't think that if India is not in BRICS, BRICS would actually remain BRICS in its true sense. Um, so as BRICS transitions into BRICS 10, it's very, very important that China envision this as a critical moment to reshape the global order. But we have to wait and see how this vision will materialize. But apart from that, it's very important that this internal division has to be put to rest. And I do believe that this is the place where China has to play an important role. I think this is the right time for China to understand, to realize that for multilateral groupings, for regional groupings to become a success, very important that uh, countries should come together. But we have seen how China has played a role of disruptor. It has been saying that India is a disruptor, but in my opinion, China has been the real disruptor. And China has used groupings such as BRICS and SEO to undermine India and its interests, and perhaps to also undermine India's role within the groupings. India has shown that India wants to be an active and important part of the grouping. So I do believe this entire narrative, the discourse that has been coming emerging out of China, is not something that is true. So I do believe China has to address this lopsided, this flawed discourse that has been emerging out of China, and it's very important that all the member countries work together to make BRICS a success. So thank you for watching, and for more insights, follow Print. I'll see you next week.